Morning. It looks like we have some people trickling in here. We're gonna continue to have a couple people, I'm sure.
So are you in the office?
Yep, I am in the office. Thanks for catching that. I'm gonna be on mute for a minute while we let people in, and
Sure.
whenever you feel good to start, go ahead.
Thanks, Joe. Looks like we've still got people trickling in. Give another minute. Good morning. Glad to see people joining. We'll give another minute as people are still trickling in. I think we may as well get started. I don't see anybody else trickling in, and they'll catch up. Thanks everybody for joining. Good morning. Today is a GPT workshop tailoring AI solutions. Um, Welcome to Integrate Detroit. Our mission is to support development of engineering capabilities within Detroit and to reduce the race and gender gap amongst software technologists in Detroit. Glad to have you here. My name is Steve Schreiber. I'm Director of Engineering at Integral. I'm assisted by Joe Colburn. Both of us have put in quite a few hours on ChatGPT, AI, and all things similar. Um, and that will come in handy for this with some tips, tricks, and maybe ideas you hadn't thought of. Let's see. Just for general housekeeping items, feel free to unmute and ask a question if you have one. Throw it in the Zoom chat, however you like. And there's no wrong way. Feel free to interrupt. I will lose my train of thought whether you interrupt me or not. So don't worry about that at all. If you want assistance, go ahead. Today we're going to end up starting with a overview or a review of ChatGPT usage and some gaps within it. I'm assuming most people have played with ChatGPT, at least conversationally played with it. Maybe you've all gotten deeper into it, but just to not assume, we're going to start with what it is, why it is, and maybe adjust some of your thinking about expectations on it. And then we're going to get into how to create your own custom GPT, which is the focal point for this, and give you some hands-on tips for how to tune that out. And if you have a ChatGPT 4 access, at the end, we'll have a workshop and you'll have your own reusable, shareable custom GPT. Anybody who doesn't have ChatGPT 4 access, we'll just huddle up and share my screen and build together. So no worries there. And with that, I'd like to start with a little icebreaker, get everybody's brain flowing and thinking, and ask you, what would it take to give up your smartphone for a month? Which is probably a terrifying prospect to most of us. You can feel free to unmute or throw in chat. I'll get it started. I was thinking a month is a really long time, and I think for me to give it up for that long a period of time, I would have to be somewhere remote, secluded, where I really didn't have a need to do traveling, technology, those sorts of things. And so that's where my thinking was at. Of no, it would have to be like I'm playing Survivor or something in that mode. I see Sachin has put in chat on a beach with no internet access. That's that I can relate to. Joe's put a 1 month vacation with the wife and dogs are present. Yeah, paying attention to the wife, right? Anybody else want to weigh in here? And what would it take to go a smartphone for a whole month? I was thinking about how often I drive blindly to somewhere, including just 2 days ago, where I barely knew where I was and was so dependent on the smartphone and the GPS, knowing where I was, how to get there, and how to get back. If the battery died, I'm sure I would have figured it out, but it would have been work. Mm. Somebody just posted silent meditation for a month in India. They have waiting lists to do this. Interesting. Levon says 20,000. just just retire for the month. All right, I'm gonna move on. Thanks for participating. Uh, so setting up your device, if you haven't already, uh, you need to get onto ChatGPT if you want to follow along with anything that we're doing. If you want to create your own at the end, um, you'll need to have an account on ChatGPT, and to follow along with the latter half of this, you would also need to have a plus account with GPT-4 access. If you don't have that, that's fine. But if you want to follow along, that's the suggestion. So if you would raise hands either through Zoom hand raising or video or however, I'd just like to know who I'm talking to and what your roles are. So do we have any students in the session today? Engineers, software engineers, product managers, ordinary managers. uh, Everybody else, a product line manager. Thank you. Web developer, marketer, journalists. Thank you. Thank you. I like to know who I'm talking to, and then if I need to adopt to any of that. Um, Thank you. All right. So if we talk about ChatGPT and talk about what it does, um, we start with the how does it work? What is all this magic? Uh, and simply put, ChatGPT interprets text, now images, voice, provides human-like responses to that. So that's why we think of it as artificial intelligence. It gives you those human-like responses. But how did it learn in order to do that? Just training from hundreds of gigabytes and from various across the internet. They have not shared the total breadth of that. But here's where this becomes very important. Uh, who does it act like? We talk about some of the bias or some of the unexpected responses, but and we at Integral have talked through this in a number of ways when somebody says, well, it didn't do what I wanted, what I expected, and we talked through this in a number of ways of, is it going to be perfect? Is it is it is it reasonable to think it would be perfect, that it would replace senior thinking and expert thinking? Are these things reasonable to expect from it? Or and so at Integral, we often have a talk track where we talk like, for an engineer, we say, does this act like a junior engineer? Does this act like a intern or somebody at that level? And that's where more of our talk track has started going towards, is thinking with the mentality of an intern. That there is a constant stream of conversation about whether it's going to replace jobs and do those sorts of things, but generally speaking, the attitude is lower level. But let's ask the question again: who does it most act like? If I go to ChatGPT right now and I say, draw me a picture of a cat, because that's what I want. That's what's in my head. Draw me a picture of a cat. And that's all I told it. What's it going to give me back? what will it think I'm thinking of? If I put this back into human terms, is this like I just randomly grab a person off the street at random at the bus stop? I take the fifth person to come off of the bus and say, draw me a picture of a cat. And if it's my 5-year old next door neighbor, that might be a crayon drawing with 4 whiskers sticking out of a head, and they're quite certain that's a cat. And I'm not so sure I need cat with a K spelled in crayon underneath it, so I know. If this was an actual artist, I'll probably get a much better recognizable work of art. But if this was a sketch artist, it's going to look different than if this was a watercolor artist versus uh, whoever that random person I ask coming off the bus to do this drawing. Why am I talking through that? This is core to working with the LLMs, working with ChatGPT, not core towards just custom GPTs, but the persona matters. And if you want to get good results, particularly when you're building a custom GPT that you're going to use and reuse and train, um, I'm sorry, I got distracted. If it's something you're going to reuse and train, then you want to make sure that you're explaining to it that persona, that role that you want it to take, and how does your vision get communicated to that system. So a couple prompts I've got here on the screen. Start with thinking about and telling the GPT, what type of person do you want to pretend to be? You might be thinking about this as far as career. You might be thinking about this as far as other attributes. So again, I want a picture of a cat. If I really want a watercolor, then I should tell it that I want you to pretend to be a watercolor painter. If I can think of my next prompt here, if I can think of somebody famous that creates works of arts that I like, and I'd like this to be in theme with, then maybe I tell it, hey, I want you to model this work like Picasso, and then draw me a cat, right? So if you've got somebody famous people naturally should be more inclined to be in its database and in its training to give it something to emulate. If you tell it, I want you to draw your paintings like Steve Schreiber would, it's going to say who's Steve Schreiber and not have the material to go from. Along those same veins, I have an account with ChatGPT. I've had for a long time. We've interacted quite a bit. I've gotten used to it. I like to think, since I have an account and have been paying for it, and it's got some session data and everything else, I'd like to think it knows who I am. I've not found that to be true. So similarly, even after all this time that I've spent, when I tell ChatGPT, you know, do it like I want, pretend you are me. It doesn't know who I am anymore. It's already forgotten. It's dealt with too many millions of people, and so I actually need to point it to works that are mine. Last prompt that I have. How do you want it to behave? Again, the details and the thought about the persona, these matter. So if you want this to be very friendly, if you want it to, if you have habits that are annoying to you, not you have habits that annoy yourself, but other people habits annoy you, then you probably want to tell the GPT not to do that. So as an example, you might tell it, which is in my demo prompts later, you might tell it, ask any clarifying questions you have. But you might be one of those people who gets overwhelmed and doesn't like it when you get barraged with 50 questions and you're like, oh, you're overwhelmed. So tell it, ask me the questions one at a time. If you don't like a lot of text, then tell it to be succinct. If you don't like trying to read the sentence 3 times to understand it, because the words are too complicated and they were right, but it just sounded overly over the top, then tell it, write at a 6th grade reading level, write at a children's level, or write at a professional level and then try and dovetail it. So again, persona matters. And when it comes to building your own custom GPT that you're going to reuse over and over, this is really critical. But this is important anytime you're using ChatGPT. It has its limits. But beyond what I said of, I've sure gotten to know it better than it's gotten to know me and adapted to me. I run into this a lot. Joe and I laugh about this regularly on our struggles with how do we get it to do what we're asking, or why didn't it after I told it 5 times? You can tell it the things that you want. As the examples I've already said, maybe I want a watercolor, maybe I want it to act like Picasso, I want it to be succinct, give me bullet points, whatever that is. I can tell it the things that I want. As I interact with it and realize what I didn't tell it or what I didn't tell it very well, I can continue to train it and refine it and fine tune that. And we can have that dialogue, but it definitely loses context. It has limits to how much of that it can and will retain. It has translation issues. So something that we run into a lot of the why is it not following the rules? I told it I only needed 1,000 characters. I'm using it to help me build a submission form. Submission form only takes 1,000 characters. It gave me this great piece of text. I loved it, and it was 1,142. Why didn't it follow the rules? I have theories on this, and Joe and I have talked through some of these at length. But I have theories on this. That part of that is the behavior and the inner workings of how ChatGPT is. The benefit of ChatGPT is it's interpretive. It takes everything that we feed it, it interprets it. Lots of math and algorithms going into that, a lot of word connection and predictive nature of words and everything else. But that is the beauty and the power of it, that it doesn't regurgitate back to me what I sent it. And that's its power. On the flip side of that, it interprets everything. It is using a lot of predictive nature about the things, and one of my theories is that it doesn't really have the framework to understand rules. That when you tell it, I want you to write at a sixth grade level, it understands that to some concept, and it has a path it's going to flow down. But when I tell it I only want 1,000 characters. I think my theory is it takes that as a suggestion. It probably interprets a size frame and not an exact count, and that it thinks and translates that to something like I want three sentences worth of text or some other meaning that it fits in that window. As it gets larger, when we get into larger constraints, the losing context comes even more into play. Of you notice it's typing along, and you're getting text, getting text. It's a seemingly a stream of consciousness. Um, I I am of the belief it hasn't retained all of that stream of consciousness, much like when I'm talking and presenting. And so it gets 8 paragraphs in and it has no idea what its word count has been. Not to mention, it was a stream of consciousness. So even if it knew what its word count would be, it doesn't go, oh no, I've got to wrap up and finish my point in 5 words. It doesn't have that ability. And if you find a way to work around that, please drop me a note. I have tried lots of different tricks. Along those lines, I work within some of those confines as I find them. So when I want a large piece of work, for example, if I wanted it to write a thesis, a multi-page document, if I wanted it to write a article that I was going to submit, and I really wanted it to be a certain size, and I see that it keeps losing that context of being in the range I want, I break it up. I give it guidelines of the pieces that I want. You know, I would like you to write 5 paragraphs for me, and the first paragraph should be the intro, and that should be no more than 6 sentences. And so I structure it. Everything that you can do that is templated and structured probably puts you on a path to greater success. All that said, I want to state the obvious that isn't so obvious. It's just a machine. It is just a work of programming. It has its limits, and at some point, you need to stop running your head into the wall and adapt to what it does and doesn't do. So I say this in the vein of if you were working with a person and you recognized that the person was doing everything that they could to their fullest understanding of what you wanted and what you were asking for, and they just simply weren't delivering. But what they were delivering was usable. It just they didn't do all the work for you, but it was usable. It saved you time, it saved you energy. You would adapt, I am assuming. And you would say, that's good enough. I can take it from here. Thank you. Um, we forget that sometimes with these machines, and we continue to try and force them and fight them and say, no, I want you to do this. We need to adapt. Example, which recently when I was prepping for this, it actually worked way better. So maybe something improved. But as an example, I had ChatGPT working on a menu for me. Just out of it knows a lot more than I do, and has a lot more resources, and I was trying a new diet, and so I wanted it to give me a variety, and so I told it, you know, a week's worth of menu ideas, have variety in this, give me the menu and a shopping list. And you know, I felt like that was a pretty simple request that I would make of lots of people with the capability. And repeatedly it kept giving me a shopping list that was pretty random. It was, 80%, but it was pretty random by comparison to the menu, where I would, look at this and I would ask ChatGPT, I would say, why do you have crab on here? There isn't a single crab dish in the menu. And ChatGPT is very apologetic and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, and let me fix that." And it does some wizardry behind the scenes after it says, "Let me fix that," and then gave me a similarly bad result. um, Again, like working with an intern, if they were giving me something usable and just weren't getting it, I'm gonna stop. um in this case, if it was an intern, I might, scratch my head one more time and wonder what was causing the issue. I wondered the same thing with ChatGPT, and I found again the context problem coming into play, and found that if I asked it to give me a day menu, and give me the shopping list for that day, or a meal and the shopping list for the meal, it kept the context much better, gave me something much more complete. That meant more work for me to take each of those and put them together to actually go shopping, but it was usable and I could move forward. I won't belabor this, but I do encourage you to keep that in mind as you're working with these and interacting with these systems of don't keep running your head full speed into the wall. As I move on the agenda, some of the gaps that have existed with ChatGPT revolved around reusability and sharing it. So first bullet, yay, there is now some abilities to share a link to your chat. When Joe and I used to play with ChatGPT way back when, we would copy and paste a whole block of the here's how I got there, and screenshots, copy and paste all that, and sometimes we would look back at it and be like, do I have to retype all this and replay all of this uh in order to recreate? And and now there's an easy way to get a link to the chat and share that out, and somebody can get it and they're automatically there. They don't have to replay it. They don't have to wonder the all the other problems of did it keep all the context and everything else are still in play, of course, but that does make it easier. But the reusability becomes challenging because as I've trained all of that, and I look to reuse it for a similar purpose, there's that whole aspect of did it keep all the training that was appropriate for it? So I'll give an actual example of if I used ChatGPT to help structure a blog article, and I went through and I said, oh, I really liked how it did this. Now, I might share the link with Joe and say, hey, look at this, and he might say, oh, that's great. And then he says, okay, I'm going to reuse this. I want to reuse this on mine. Um, Now he might have all that context and training of what's a blog, what are important aspects of it, all of those things might go into it. But he can't separate out all that training that was given from the content that I was also providing it at the same time. I wanted a blog on how to create a custom GPT, and now he wants to create a blog on the power of pair programming, and it keeps pulling in ChatGPT and creating custom into it, and he's like, how did that happen? Switching context becomes very problematic because there isn't a separation between the training and the theming of it from what was the actual context. So that's been a problem area where we're like, "Ah, I really like the results I was getting, and I'd like to reuse this." I had something very similar where I recently I knew I was going to want to make a custom GPT, um, but in my haste, I started with just an interactive session with ChatGPT, uh, and I got to that point where I was like, okay, I really like this. I'd like to move on. And I told it, I'd like to move on, create a whole new document. And it said, great. What's the theme going to be? And I'm like, oh, yay. It's getting much better. It's improving. It's smarter. And we worked out all those core details. And I was thinking, I already gave it all the training, worked out all those core details, working through it. And next thing I know, it's pulling in content from the last article that I just finished. And I told it, I'm like, no, no, just this. And it didn't have that. And immediately I was like, I should have known I was going to do this. I tell you my mistakes and my lessons learned to save you of the if you're thinking that this is something you're going to do twice and certainly three times, start with a custom GPT. As of today, there is no transition path to take your working session and say, I like this, let's turn it into a GPT. As of today, there is no path to do that. So learn from my mistake. If you're going into something thinking you're going to reuse this at least two more times, start with the GPT, the custom GPT, because otherwise you're just going to be repeating the work. Looking at chat, I don't see any questions. Joe, have I missed anything? I
One
see a
just
question.
came through.
Does ChatGPT 4 allow you to add PDFs and spreadsheet files? Yes, yes, and it works. It works pretty well. So Joe's probably got a couple examples as well, but I got a ebook and that was in a PDF form, and it was much larger than I expected it to be, and I got about 20% of the way through it, and it felt very fluffy. It felt like it was completely a sales pitch and that it might not have any content, which was going to frustrate me if I read the entire thing and got nothing out of it other than the sales pitch. So I think Joe and I were talking about this, and then we're like, ChatGPT, the rescue. So I uploaded the PDF of this ebook into ChatGPT, and I asked it, and I naturally, just like I would with a person, I had to ask it some pointed questions because if I just asked ChatGPT, is this valuable? It would answer back with yes. It is exactly what it says it is, or what have you. So what I have found is asking it to summarize things or give lists is very helpful. So in that particular case, I actually asked it to summarize for me some of the takeaways from that book. Joe, you got a story about this?
Yeah, I'll just give a quick additional example of it files in custom GPT can be used for as a knowledge set. So you can have a in the context of a custom GPT, and I don't want to steal any of your thunder in later slides, but you can add it as a as kind of an internal knowledge base to that custom GPT. So if you have a bunch of context that it will need every time it's used, that's a good use case for throwing in a document. And another example is if you have a specific format of output that you want, you can use a document as a template and refer to that, which I've done before with pretty decent success.
Awesome examples. I have it on a talk track, but I don't have it on the demo track. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Joe. And if I don't talk to it deep enough in those slides, please jump back in. Those are great references for the custom of how ChatGPT 4 can use those. Love it. Any other questions before I move on? Looking good. All right. So custom GPT fills those gaps. It is, and we're going to get to a demo soon, and make this a little bit less of a lecture and a little bit more hands-on very soon. Custom GPT fills a lot of those gaps. It is fully trainable. Again, I'm going to emphasize train it about the persona, train it about its purpose, train it about its role. The more context you're trying to give it, you have just pulled a random intern off the bus at the at the university, maybe, and you didn't interview them. They didn't interview you, and so if you just say, "Hey, I need you to put together a symphony," you might have the wrong person. So training them on the persona and what it is that you want out of them, their mindset, their role. Custom GPT still allows you to do that just like you can with a regular chat GPT session. It includes a preview panel so that you can test it. I love this. I love this because I feel like I'm in developer mode without having to be a developer or anything of that sort. And so I sit there and I'm like, I think we're good. I think we're good. Chat GPT, let's give this a run. And then I give it a little test and I'm like, oh, I should have told it whatever. And then I go right back to the GPT builder panel and I tweak that and I'm like, oh, I forgot to tell you. I could save it. I should have put out that it's also editable. It's not a one-time creation. I can edit it later after I save it. So I could save it and edit it later, refine it some more. I can share it. So I could share it privately. I could say, hey, Joe, I love what I built. You want to play with this? But I could also just share it to the world and put it out there publicly. And for me, one of the biggest benefits is it's reusable. The difference between the whole training and what you see on the GPT builder and how you're using it in the preview panel is that separation that I've wanted of where's all my training versus no, that was a piece of content. Let's start over, make a new piece of content. And so that there is that clear distinction between the two, allowing for nice reusability. Um, so with that, let me actually do a demo. Yesterday, I blew up ChatGPT's governor limits, so I'm going to try not to today. Otherwise, we will just bounce around a couple different accounts and we'll make this work. So I'm in ChatGPT. If I go, I'm in a plus account. If I go on the left panel to where it says Explore GPTs, you see an entire library here of things that are already public and available, and a nice little button to create your own. So I'll create my own. This is what I was talking about, where you have your builder side of this, and then you have a preview that lets you see how this is working and test how this is working and play with it a bit. So I'm going to, just so that I make fewer typos, I have prompts saved off that I'm just going to start copying and pasting. So start with, it's asking me, what do you want to do? What do you want to make? And so I could take on the personality of a caricature artist. Create artwork for people to enjoy based on word prompts or images. It should be representative of art that people would want to hang on their walls of their house. I'm trying to be descriptive. I'm trying to set that stage. The first thing that the builder does, it asks you a simple prompt. I've seen people give it a simple answer. It's starting to get to a, how do you want me to save this? It's not even really thinking about refining yet. So it asks you, hey, what do you want to call this? and you can interact with this the same way you would with any chat GPT. You could say, no, I hate it. Of course, I always joke around that I'm always as polite as can be for when these gain self-awareness, so I'm on the good list. But you know, if something actually struck your fancy, you could suggest right back to it, and you could also say fine. This is why I copied and pasted my prompts, so I didn't misspell everything. You can suggest right back, and this, you know, it's ChatGPT. It's very polite and compliant. And then it likes to get a little profile picture. It wants to hurry up and get to a name and a picture so it can save off your work. Oh, that's clever. Sorry for all the people who don't like clowns. um, Sorry for all the people who don't like clowns. I'm gonna say that's good for now. You can always change all these things later. Everything is editable, and we'll get into some of that. But I just want to get through this. What really amazes me, and you might find, is sometimes you'll give it what you think is plenty of information on how you want it to work, and sometimes it asks you for clarification that you're like, I'm pretty sure I answered that. So I'm not sure why it's asking style, but it is asking about interacting with the users. So because I did tell it to be a character artist. So let's tell it I want it to be friendly. I really do hate it when it bombards me with 50 questions. That wasn't just a hypothetical. So I'm going to tell it I want it to be friendly, I want it to ask clarifying questions. I I often add those two prompts. This is my preference, but also uh, my suggestion to many people is telling it to ask for clarifying questions is a trick that I've learned that otherwise it makes lots of assumptions. It doesn't necessarily even know it's making an assumption. It just plows down with what it thought it interpreted. When I tell it to ask for clarifying questions, it seems to change its mindset a little bit, such that it is. I don't know how that decision tree works, and if it's like, man, it's a 50-50 split, and that's what I asked. I don't know how that works, but I do find this works better. There's always a little pause with these things as it updates its logic. You notice on the right side in the preview, it's already got the name in place. It's got that icon in place. It's also got a few buttons, prompts to help start it. And so now it's made another update, and it is listening to me. It's echoing back. It's listening to me. Be friendly. Ask clarifying questions. Let's talk about the types of work. Yeah, I told you caricature. Uh, and I'm actually just gonna skip. I'm not gonna talk to it anymore. I told it caricatures. I can see on the right in the prompts. It knows that. I'm not sure why it's asking me a specific theme or style. Seems like it knows that. So I'm just gonna test it out in the preview panel. And so for fun and giggles, I'm gonna take my profile picture. Give it my profile picture, tell it to use that as a base for a character, like an artist that I sit down in front of, right? Oh, it's so flattering. A welcoming smile and a friendly appearance. Oh, that's so nice. It's gonna make me blush. It's going to emphasize. Now here's so I've been working on prompts in my slide deck and whatever for a little while now, and here's the AI in AI. It does not always It does not always give me the same responses. I'll start with, it doesn't always say something flattering, but it doesn't always just jump into what it's going to do and build a piece. I told it to ask for clarifying questions, and I'd say half of my interactions, as I've been practicing and warming up for this event, I'd say half of my interactions with it has told me, I'm going to emphasize all this, blah, 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 and then asked me whether or not that sounds fine and it should proceed or if there was something else. So it's funny how the AI works, and that you could feed the same prompts and the same style over and over. You do not always get the same result. And I don't mean that just in what the art looks like. I mean that in the whole conversation path. So that's fine. Um, but that's not what I'm used to. I don't know how many of you like to get caricatures or do that when you're on vacations or holidays, but I do it a lot. Just one of those things, and usually they are much more exaggerated, and poking fun. So this, to me, this looks more like just an artist rendering. So I'd like to fine tune that. Now here's the key, and this is what's important for you as you look to repeat this. In the right side, in the preview panel, this is my session with ChatGPT, right? In the left side, in the GPT builder, this is what I'm saving for a template that is going to reuse. So what's important is, if there was something I was doing on the right side that was purely context, where I was like, no, don't play with the ears so much, play with the nose. Then that's something I would put in the preview side of the, hey, specific to this context. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, that's not what I'm accustomed to from a caricature. I want to change this GPT. I want to change the attitude and the results that it's giving. I want to change how this is working. So I'm going to go back onto the builder side, and I'm going to work on some more training for it, so that every time I use this going forward, maybe it's more in line with what I want. So I'm going to tell it, you should focus on exaggerating facial features. Maybe it doesn't understand what a caricature artist is. So tell it that. It's going to rebuild. I see Lamont asked a question. Can you only save with a plus account? As far as I'm aware, yes, only with the plus account.
Yeah,
Uh,
correct.
so it says it got it, and it's repeating back to me that it, so seems like it understood. Oh, now it's asking me a new question. Should it provide, and again, these interactions have been different every time I've done this. Even though I have copied and pasted and used the same prompts several times. Should it provide users with a brief description or insight into the artistic choices made for each artwork? Sure, why not? Is it going to rebuild and do anything? Yes. Going to rebuild. Give it a minute to do this, and then wow, it's asking me a lot more questions today. Uh, it was, they should feel entertained. I always, I mean, you're supposed to laugh at characters, right? It's I'm happy to answer its prompts. I've told it to ask me clarifying questions, so kind of rude if I don't play along with it. And let's see how it's refined and built this out. So I'm gonna do the exact same thing. Take my stock photo. Oops, that's not what I want. See, see what it comes back with. And if that's more in line with what we're thinking. Now, We don't have to do images. I started with this because it's easy. It's easy and it's visual. You could do this with lots of text things. I actually went through a run through of making a custom GPT that did poetry work, and then I got oh nice. I got about to this point. I got about to this point in my experiment where I suddenly realized that I don't know poetry. I'm not a poet, and so I had nothing to tune or train or no feedback to provide whatsoever because I was just like, yeah, that seems rhymy and good enough. I'm looking at these and I'm like, oh yeah, no, this is good. And that's funny. And it's keeping the shirt. Isn't that fun? Uh, so um, we could keep on going with this. We could keep on going with this, but I mean, I feel like it's already kind of caught the mood, and pretty quickly. And I will admit, in past run throughs of this, part of why I saved some of my prompts, but past run throughs with this, it took me about 5 or 6 back and forth with it to get it to really try to exaggerate and take that into play. Um, Let's let's see how well it's doing. Let's take somebody famous. How about Kid Rock? It should know who that is. Oh, won't be able to use his name or specific likeness.
There,
Uh,
there's a whole legal team preventing you from doing that.
there hasn't always been, right?
Yeah, so sometimes you can get around it, but generally it will complain.
Uh,
For
yeah,
example,
the last time I don't remember who I picked. The last time, maybe it was somebody very historic. Uh, I got around it. If I don't use a name and use a generality. Uh, Gray hair, stoic look, and wartime hero. Let's see what that spits out. And if we did anything right, it might look somewhat familiar, but should be exaggerated in a caricature. Maybe. So I'll move on from this and pay attention to the configure tab. So let me scroll back. Nope, don't have it. Okay. Joe, if you know what I'm trying to do, feel free to jump in. If I go to the configure, if I go back to the GPT builder side and I go to the configure, you'll see a summary. It's got the names, got the logo. It has a description I can edit. It has taken my prompts and built in its summary of those into instructions. Sometimes I tweak it in here, sometimes I don't. The big reason I was going back to this and was trying to get the right side updated was when I first started this, there were buttons that were showing up. And those buttons would be the same starting point anybody would get to when they see this. These are completely customizable, as you see right here. And so these are just the things it guessed as I was working with the builder. These are just the things it guessed, and and it says as conversation starters. We can edit these, we can delete these, add to them, what have you. So if you had a specific vision for your GPT that when you share it out with people, that's what you'd like them to get for their first prompts, to get their head in the right space and to get the right results out of this. This is where you can go to edit it. So I don't know if we want to. This obviously draw a character from this photo. That's what I started with. That was right where I started with. So it makes sense. That would be a button and a conversation starter. These are nice. I don't know if it might have been what you were thinking about. And then you might come up with some other ideas like take a photo and make it a caricature. I'm having trouble spelling this morning. On a scenic vacation background. And how do I get the update? I'll just save.
Yeah, so in when you are in the configure setting, you're not interactive anymore, so
Right.
you have to save versus in the chat interface.
Thanks, Joe. All right, so I saved it. Now I'm executing. This would be the same result as if I shared it. And so you see that that button's added. Take a photo and make it a character on a scenic vacation. This was the starting point. Now these now match all those buttons I was saying. So if I, pardon me, if I shared this with somebody, or I was just like, I made this character GPT, have fun with it, and they're like, what do I do with this? Now they got some starting points, and they're like, oh, that sounds nice. They click there. Now this is starting with chat. Luckily, it's smart enough to say, okay, I kind of need you to upload it. So okay, take mine again. We're gonna keep reusing the same one because you don't need all the pictures of me in your world. And let's see if it asks me a question. Yes. How about that? I was hoping it would ask me the question because I told it to. So we've gone with very generic of against a scenic vacation background. So it asked me, do you have a specific location in mind? And it's giving a couple suggestions. So yes. Now, is it going to exaggerate? Is it going to do all the things I want? Sachin has a question. Can I share the custom GPT with someone who doesn't have a Plus account? Uh, Joe, do you know the definitive answer? I have shared some things and gotten varied results. Do you know the definitive answer?
Give me 1 second, I'll tell you.
Okay.
The account I'm signed into right now is not Plus.
So once again, it didn't seem to keep the it did what I asked, but it didn't really seem to keep the exaggeration aspect, which is something I was encountering a lot when I was prepping for this. I went pretty quick there, so sorry for everybody who didn't notice. I went to the menu buttons and chose to edit it, so I'm back to the configuring. So this is what I was talking about previously, where it's like I can continue on my GPT, I can continue to edit and refine it for the rest of its existence. So I'm gonna tell it, I'm gonna remind it again, when you choose something, exaggerate, grossly over exaggerate those features to make them really stand out. And so we'll go with that.
While that's working, it looks like the custom GPTs don't show up at all for accounts that are not plus.
I've yeah, I've run into some. I don't know if they were. I don't know if I found leaks in the system or how that works, but I have found sometimes when I share a specific URL, I get a little bit of luck. Um, there was an issue updating my behavior, and it didn't redraw this. That's neat and fun today. Why was there an issue updating your behavior, ChatGPT? Let's see if it knows the answer. That was that's neat. It's, is OpenAI having a load issue this morning?
Yeah, maybe.
Well, the joy of live demos on systems outside of our control. I'll move on and I'll move on and switch gears. We've spent a lot of time. We've spent a lot of time on an image and editing it, but the general intent hopefully has gotten along. So this has all been image based, and uh, I'll let you guys see if you can access if you like. And if you're able to access and don't have a for account, that'll be nice to know. Sachin had a good question. Or suggestion. I wonder if it will know. Sachin suggested asking it what the issue was.
I've done that before. I can confirm it says requires ChatGPT plus when I click with my non-plus account.
Okay. Okay. All right. That wasn't particularly helpful. So anyways, I will move on, and this is saved. Maybe it's taken effect, maybe it hasn't. This has all been text-based. I can make a new one.
Sorry to interrupt. Did you want to share that link out to everyone in the Zoom chat?
Oh, so sorry. That was my intent.
Okay, I will. I got it.
Thank you. So all that effort was on making making a image based. We can do the same thing with text based, which is what I do a lot of. I make a lot of these that are text based. So as an example now, I might start with my favorite stress point. Want you to weekly menus. I like to eat, and I like various cuisines. So give me a nice variety, but apply a carb cycling. That's my latest trend that none of you cared about. See what it does. It's going to ask me for a name again. This will be completely text-based, and and sure, I'm just for expedience. For expedience, I'm just going to go with the profile picture, the name, and just move on, and try to get through this quicker. Just to get a preview for you of the how this will work in a text-based world.
There's a chat question too.
Oh, can I also show the images of how the dish is going to look like? Probably not. Unless Joe's run into some fun tweak, it doesn't tend to actually take things and display them. It uses them as a model for what it does, and so my attempts to get something like that have been rough sketch arty kind of interpretations of, yeah, I suppose that's spaghetti and meatballs, but not what I want in my kitchen. Joe, have you had any better luck with images of the dish in this example looking like you'd expect?
Um, I would say a valuable answer to that is experiment, because it it's kind of wide open. You can get it to do a lot of things, and sometimes you'll be surprised at things that do work that you weren't sure would work. For example, you could ask your chat GPT, your custom GPT uh to try and show an example image with each recipe and see how it works. Then if it doesn't work, pivot and maybe don't make that an option. Also under the configure tab, there's three checkboxes near the bottom. One of those is for Dolly, and you can specifically make your custom GPT not use Dolly, so people can't request it to make images if you wanted to do that, or you can have that checked and set it up to try and make images. So I would experiment.
Good call. Okay. So Joe mentioned, and I don't have an example at the ready, so my apologies for that. But Joe mentioned previously about the ability to upload files into the GPT. So I have the same paperclip icon over here as we've been using in the preview panel, but also on the configure panel that Joe was just talking about, where we've got those check boxes. And I'll be honest, I've never tried to uncheck that
I don't know why you
and
would.
block people. That's a great tip. Yeah, great tip. So also over here is where you can specifically upload files into the conversation. If I'd had a template, as Joe had suggested, of what the output could look like, I could either drop it in here as the uploads, or I could say something like attached is a template, which I don't have. Of how I'd like the menus to look, and then could attach that to it. Also, if I had a working list of foods I don't like, or things I'm allergic to, and things I wanted to avoid. If I had a working list of those, I might also do that as an attachment, so that I could also easily edit that in the future. So that's an item that I suggest to you of the if you're starting to build lists, and as lists are, they always change. If you're starting to build lists, rather than typing the list in, drop it into a file and upload that into the system, and allow it to do that. So I'm just going to jump out here.
There is a question
Oh,
in chat about is there a limit to the number of files that can be uploaded? I honestly don't know. I did a quick search and it says 20 per GPT for the lifetime of the GPT. So I'm going to go with that. That's from help.openai.com. So I kind of trust the source there.
uh,
Um,
thanks, Joe. Yeah, I also saw 20 just last night when I was looking. Here's fun. You notice on the left I've done very minimalistic work effort on putting this together. I did have tell it to ask clarifying questions. And I've given it very minimal information today, which is different than yesterday and the day before. Today, I told it to make a menu for a week, and it just rushed right into making the menu. And here it is. Every other day that I've done this, it has immediately asked me what my desired calorie count is for a day. Uh, Today it didn't. If I was running into this and said, well, hey, that's an important thing. Again, I wouldn't change it on the preview side because that's only going to change this particular session. I would be going into the chat, into the GPT builder side, work in that panel, and specifically change that so its behavior is changed. Know how many calories per day. And it says it did it. It's probably going to be very obedient now on this particular point. And we'll move on here in a minute. Ah, and and now it went back to asking me three questions in a row, which are all good questions. But I told it to ask me questions one at a time, and yeah, it stopped listening again. Sometimes, like my kids, it needs a couple reminders. Um, anyways, I don't want to belabor all this. I see Joe mentioned. I see Joe mentioned he makes here. Joe, you go ahead and say it.
sure, yeah. I didn't want to interrupt, but I I like to make ChatGPT do a lot of. Don't listen to what I'm saying, Steve. Steve's my manager. I like to make ChatGPT do my work for me. And so if there's anything tedious like creating a template, I might go to regular chat GPT and say, hey, make me 5 recipe templates that I could use for a recipe software. And then I'd pick the one I like the most and just throw that in a Word document or a PDF and add that to my custom GPT. That's a quicker path to experimenting. And I would also say too, to the point of when it's not behaving the way you want, you can go into configure like we were looking at before and just double check. You can also ask it, what are your parameters? What are you supposed to do? And it'll pretty much probably give you this instruction set. But you can double check stuff and kind of tweak it in here and go back and forth, whatever seems to work best.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe. And when we go back to this configure where I had showed before that it kind of summarizes what it's doing, it very clearly, I'll ask clarifying questions, but I'll make sure to ask them one at a time. It does what it does. I will very quickly point to something that is not covered in this session, a bit of an advanced topic, maybe a future session. There's a mysterious button at the bottom that I've not talked about. Create a new action. That is for integrating ChatGPT with other systems. This is pretty advanced and getting a little bit more into the coding world. A great topic to explore. not something that we have the time for this session, but maybe we'll make another one about this. This is a great way to extend what ChatGPT knows and what it's working from to be able to have external influences to it. Um, with that, with that, show GPT in it. I'm gonna take this to a more interactive session, and I'm just going to ask that at this point, if anybody's going to drop out from the hands-on interactive workshop side of this, if you don't mind taking a survey either now or when you have a minute, I appreciate that and appreciate the feedback. I see a couple of things in the chat. Sachin says, I've used OpenAI Playground Assistant in the past. It looks very similar to Custom GPT. Do you know if Custom GPT or Playground Assistant is better? Joe, do you have an opinion on this? You have lots of opinions.
I have a technical clarification on the difference between the two. Custom GPT is something that can be shared that has an interface to interact with it. The OpenAI assistant, you can interact with it in the playground, but but my understanding is the assistant is only accessible via API. If you were to make it trying to integrate that into any software, that's where you would use an assistant rather than a custom GPT. Now, I don't know if that's going to change, but that was my last understanding of it.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe. Do you know, like, if behind the scenes it's using the same technology, like same models as well?
I would think that it is. I think OpenAI has a pattern of using their own
Mhm.
APIs
Sure.
for all of their technologies and interfaces
Yeah.
around ChatGPT.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, they are accessible by API, but OpenAI Assistant also have Playground Assistant also have like an interface where basically like it's may not be shareable, but using that site, you can kind of like ask questions and then it gives responses.
Yeah, it's a great way if you're building an assistant to get to success faster. And then
Mhm.
once you have that success with your assistant that you've built, you can use it via the API programmatically.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'll plus one on the on they're reusing their own pieces and all that. I read somewhere where they said that their GPT builder is actually using their whole GPT engine to build the GPT builder to build your GPT. So it's quite a pyramid they've got going. Uh, I see we have another question in here, Joe. If you don't mind, I'm gonna punt this to you. Uh, Asks, is it okay to use ChatGPT or a specialized tool like Midjourney for image generation? Interested in using fewer tools and get overwhelmed by so many tools that work with the ChatGPT key.
Um, yeah, and I guess I'd want to know maybe a little bit more about the context of the question. Are you asking is it acceptable from a moral standpoint or legal? There's kind of a few different vantage points, but I would say um, Midjourney and ChatGPT's Dolly both have some protections, as we saw, where it wouldn't generate an image of Kid Rock. Where they try to avoid generating images of public figures and those kind of things. You can try and describe the person that you wanted to generate an image of, but generally they have those protections in place. There's also tools like Midjourney and ChatGPT's Dolly. They're trained on public image sets, and so you can make it use a specific style of image. You can mention an artist by name. I don't know how well that works with Dolly or Midjourney. I use Stable Diffusion on my own computer, and with Stable Diffusion, you can absolutely do that. You can mention a specific artist type or style, and in doing that, there's differing opinions about how okay that is because you're basically creating a mock of that artist style. So I think it's up to your personal preference, but it is possible with various tools. Does that answer that question?
I'll just clarify. I was partly thinking legal, but I was also thinking about cost. It's almost like the you know the Netflix subscriptions and all the streaming companies. You're trying to sort of use the fewest tools to get what you need as the tools emerge. So I'm assuming ChatGPT for sure, but there's just an avalanche of tools, and do you even need some of those tools if you could use ChatGPT? It's more about efficiencies and trying to reduce the learning time and the cost as well.
Yeah, great clarification. Mid-Journey, I know you're gonna spend some money and go back and forth with getting images fine-tuned through that. And it absolutely is better to use one tool if you can. ChatGPT is getting better and better at image generation. And I have used ChatGPT's or OpenAI's APIs for image generation. And for what I've done with it, it's worked just fine. Something like Midjourney may produce better images depending on your need for the image. But if you want images that are that ChatGPT is able to handle, do some tests through ChatGPT, and if it can handle it, absolutely, it makes sense to narrow down to one tool. And it might be easier if you're doing things programmatically with it because you have one API key, you're making one connection to one service.
Great, thanks.
Great questions. Thank you. Thanks, Joe, for jumping in. So the rest of this time is more workshop, hands-on, interactive for you all to be able to play, experiment, and ask for help, raise questions, do that. So to get started, if you don't have any ideas, I use ChatGPT. So just like Joe says, I use ChatGPT plenty to do my thinking for me and to help get me off of a blank slate. I let it do as much as possible. So when I'm at a stuck or at a crossroads, I let it help me out. So if you don't have any ideas for what to get started with, you could give it a prompt. Give me your 10 best ideas. I like to give it a number because I never know if it's just going to give me one and I'll hate it. So I like to give it a number. Give me your 10 best ideas to. Oops, my grammar's bad. To demonstrate what I can do with a custom GPT. I ran this a few times and I got very different responses, which was amazing. But here were some of the ideas that I was like, oh, those could be a lot of fun. Like I said, I already played with the poetry and then realized I don't know anything about poetry. Some people are really into the gaming with the fantasy world, and that could be a lot of fun. Maybe a scriptwriter. You could also just take a look at what's in the GPT store to help get some ideas flowing for you. So for everybody who has a GPT-4 account, I encourage you to jump in there, start playing with it, pick a prompt and have some fun with it, and we can hang out. And if you have a question or an issue, raise your hand, throw it in the chat, unmute yourself, and we'll help you out all we can, possibly even take you to a private room. Show of hands, which you can use the Zoom chat or raise through the reflections. Show of hands of everybody who does not have a GPT-4 account, and then I could just screen share and let you drive. Does anybody not have a GPT-4 account? All right. I'm not getting any responses there. So at this point, oh, I got one. At this point, encourage you to play in your own session and holler if we can help. I've got some takers on not having an account, so I'll go back here and and I will start a new session all over. And I will let you all tell me what you want. So if you want to unmute, feel free. There's safe space here. What we got? I'm sorry, Joe, did you say something?
Yeah, I was saying Sai has a hand raised.
Oh. Sai, were you raising your hand just to share that you don't have a GPT-4, or do you have a prompt for me to get started with?
No, I don't have the GPT-4, so that's why I raised my hand.
Okay.
I
Does
have
anybody have a prompt to get started?
I've got one. How about a GPT that makes a limerick that describes the plot of any movie you ask it about? I know it's terribly useful.
And also limerick about any movie. Right?
Yeah. I have no idea how this will turn out.
I have no idea either, but this will be a lot of fun. The limerick cinematographer. That's a mouthful. I'm going to tell it that. If I could type today. Cinelimerick. Oh, that's awesome.
That is awesome. I will say too, from a developer point of view, the hardest thing about being a software engineer is naming variables and files and stuff. So a tip for me on this is to just say okay to whatever name or image it starts out with. And then once everything's working and you've proven that it does what you want, then go back to those details.
Oh, see, that's where my manager hat comes back, and I'm like, no, the first idea is never a good one. Give me your second one. And so to what we were showing before, it's already created these prompts, and it already even created them with movie titles in there. So we don't have to do much thinking at all. We can jump right over to the preview and not even think about a movie and just click a button, and here we go.
Not too bad.
It at least knows things about the movie, huh?
Yeah. I don't remember the rules for what constitutes a limerick, so I'm assuming it's okay.
Yeah, I'm not a poet, and I know it. That was fun. About I really, oops, that is not what I wanted to do. I really liked this when I saw it, although that's not my world. I know it is for a lot of people, and I thought that that would be a lot of fun. So if nobody's gonna suggest, I'm just here. I'm gonna save this one just for you, Joe.
I'm gathering there's probably some people working on their own GPTs in their own space too. If you have any questions while you're doing that, feel free to throw them in chat, and I will do my best to help answer.
New chat. I just realized that I've been fighting with this. New chat just starts over a new session in the Cinelimerick, not building a new GPT.
You have to go back to explore again.
Yeah, I almost embarrassed that it's taken me a couple days to figure that out. But I'm gonna assume that I just saved somebody else a couple days, even if it's only one person. Let's see how this works out. Anybody Dungeon and Dragon game player? Fantasy Forge. All right. I need some help. I need some prompts. Anyone want to drop an answer in? What specific aspects of fantasy world creation should this focus on? Should specialize in creating characters, landscapes, cultures, plot lines, or should it have a broad focus on all these? Anyone? Audience participation is welcome.
How about a fantasy world where Santa has his sleigh guided by dragons instead of reindeer?
So that'll be what the GPT is always themed around.
Oh, I thought you were asking for a prompt example.
I'll happily do it over here too. I have also lost half of the words you said.
Sometimes I like to just do a preview right off the bat to see how it does, and then that kind of guides how I add to the creation rules on the left side.
Right.
Where Santa's sleigh is guided by dragons instead of reindeer. I feel like that's going to turn out very metal. Okay, so this is interesting because this is going to just give you the whole description. For some reason, I was thinking of it as image generation. But,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's for the prompt it was asking, would it create characters, landscapes, cultures, plot lines? So we haven't really refined it on what it should do. We gave it a pretty open prompt there. I wasn't sure either whether this was going to spit back images, and no, that's not what it did. It yeah, the world of Yuletide, the mystic realm of Yuletide. This is fun.
Yeah, so I guess for an example of a creation prompt, you could experiment with things like asking it to create a 5 characters for your fantasy world, and for each character give a one paragraph description and an image, or just a one paragraph description and some stats or something like that.
I'm glad if you noticed what I was typing. I'm glad you said a number because I didn't specify, and I usually do. So thanks for that nudge. I changed this back to 5.
Was I really saying the same thing you were typing?
It was
I wasn't
close.
even looking. That's awesome.
It was close. We must work together a lot.
Yeah.
Let's see what this comes back with. Even if it fails, it's going to be, what did Bob Ross say? Happy accident?
Yuletide Mage. I'm kind of interested in when this game will be released, Steve, so you'll have to let us know.
No, we've just been playing with this like we would a chat session. So drawing it back to the power of the GPT builder itself. If we decided that we really wanted this builder to focus on something in specifics, we might jump over to the builder side and say, this is what I want you to do, or we might actually configure it and customize the prompts to help get that direction going for people who come along later. Look at that dragon.
You can also take cues from, if you notice the dragon and the mage, both images, they seem to follow a bit of a pattern of being not photorealistic necessarily, which is maybe fine, right? But also perhaps kind of different or similar color schemes where it's a good use of many different colors. If you didn't like that for your custom GPT, you could be more specific and say, I want the images to be black and white, or I want the images to be more photorealistic or whatever on the creation side, and guide how that works for everyone.
Good call out.
Alternately, you could make it, oh my gosh, my GPT is awesome. Sorry. I'll share the one I created. The alternately, you could make that an option for the user to prompt and give instructions. Have the GPT give the user instructions or prompt for those things. It really is up to how you want your GPT to perform.
So thanks for the prompt suggestion. I'm changing on the left side to say any character images, make them look like something I've created from my 3D printer, and not a photorealistic image. And that might be fun. Unfortunately, for everybody who's been enjoying this theme, when it rebuilds, it's going to rebuild and restart, and it will not remember the realm of Yuletide or continue that forward again. We can hope, and we could try to get it back into that place, but we will never quite recreate it again. So and oh, this is what I ran into yesterday as well. Joe, I could switch accounts and have some fun with this, but Joe, you said you were having something fun that you were going to share screen?
Sorry, I had to unmute. I can share it with you. Oh, it's gonna, yeah, okay. So let me jump into my other account and I'll share it with you. I need to save my GPT.
I could switch accounts.
Okay.
I could switch accounts and
I made my GPT public.
I can start a whole new, I'll take my work account now and start a whole new session here.
Can you search for Fun Flick, all one word, FUNFLICK? Curious if it'll come up. Yeah, there
There
it
it
is.
is.
I asked it
So-
to.
So before we get too deep in here for everybody else who has a for account, you've got all the everything that's featured and everything else, but there's the search and any title that you put in there is visible. We can see who did it. There's Joe, so I knew it was the right one right away.
And you can see that you're the first one to use it.
So we'll start chat.
Yeah, I did my prompt for the Matrix and it was hilarious. This is it's a play on your caricature idea, but with movie posters. So imagine any of your favorite movies as caricatures, and could be fun. The first one I experimented with made me laugh, so I thought it was fun to share. If anyone else has one that you're having some fun success with, feel free to share. I probably want to refine this to not dump out a book of text and just dump an image instead. So I barely even created this. I haven't tweaked it, but
Also for to preempt a question. Oh, error creating image. We're really struggling today. Come on, OpenAI. To preempt a question that you guys might come to later. This is Joe's GPT. He shared it publicly on the prompt or on the menu that I can click on. I can start new chat and do all those things. I can't edit it. This is Joe's, and only Joe can edit it. OpenAI does now have a couple other account levels of a team account and enterprise account. The team account does allow for more sharing. It costs more per month, but it does allow for more sharing that we could co-edit and have combined ability there. But for regular ChatGPT 4, anything that you create is yours and nobody will be able to edit it. They can just use it. And if you wanted to collaborate, you will have to be the one taking the actions that they're suggesting in the collaboration. This is clever. This is fun. I know we're getting on time. And so as much fun as this is, I think we should probably start to wrap up. Here's a link again to the survey, and I'd like to open the floor up to any other questions anybody has, or if there's no other questions, I'd like to thank all of you for your time and thanks for joining us, and appreciate all the interactiveness we have had.